Welcome to the Through the Web podcast with me, the co-host Tawsif, and
Dagogo from Cold Fusion.
say Cold Fusion, like always from Cold Fusion. Don't like say I am Cold Fusion. just go at it.
Well, maybe in time.
How have you been?
Yeah, pretty good. Just doing things here and there, some things behind the scenes. Also started reading a pretty good book.
I wonder which one that is.
It's called Atomic Habits, which you recommended to me. It's quite good. I like how it kind of steps out and changes the way you think about how habits are formed and what's actually important when you're trying to get towards a goal. I thought that was very cool. Watched some very interesting stuff, which we could get into.
Okay.
I'll pass it off to you. What about yourself? How's your week?
Yeah, man, it's been pretty busy myself. Last week we couldn't shoot an episode, but it's good to kind of get back into the rhythm again. So for those who don't know, we do have episodes that we shoot in advance just in case things happen. So while some of the episodes will be very trendy, specific topic, you might see some experimental episodes here and there. It's good to kind of get back into the rhythm again, and hopefully we churn out some really cool stuff for you to listen to.
Yeah.
So what'd you watch? What's the interesting thing that you watched?
So this is, it doesn't have much to do with technology, but I found it quite interesting. So apparently in the year 536 AD, there was a massive volcano eruption in the kind of Indonesian area that basically blotted out the sun for, a great deal of time and essentially caused famines and droughts and all this kind of stuff. And basically it led to a lot of political upheaval, but it changed the world in such a way that it kind of was the bridge between the ancient world and the modern world. So it's theorized that it was actually led to the formation of England, Japan, and Germany.
In 536.
Yeah. So essentially there was 100 years of chaos. It also led to the end of the Roman Empire as well. But so for a long time, archaeologists were kind of looking at all these different aspects of ancient society and realized there was this gap that couldn't be explained where all these things changed. But then there was a scientist that was looking at tree rings and their rate of growth. And then they pieced together different aspects. So for example, what the different economies were running on and how they functioned. And they basically pieced together this story that there was this massive disruption that changed, just completely upended society around the world and changed the course of history. So I think that this was only really solidified about 10 years ago or something, but I just watched a documentary on that. I was like, that's mad. That's really crazy.
That sounds like a very important event in
the
history of time.
But not to freak everyone out, but they're like, yeah, it could happen again.
It probably will. But on a similar scale of magnitude, this week there was another event, and there was the Will Smith slap.
That was another volcanic event, yeah.
And then I say that because my week was kind of consumed by the reactions and the hot takes and all that kind of stuff, and not because it was just a Hollywood kind of thing, because I follow the Oscars anyway, because I'm into the world of filmmaking and things of that sort. But it was more so how people tied in so many different personal angles to it. That was quite interesting to see. It was just a slap in itself, but the reaction that brought in different perspectives and just reading through them was fascinating at first, and then really tiring towards the end.
Yeah, I think it highlights the internet, but it just highlights exactly how things are. There is an event, something happens, but there's just so many opinions that it's no one really has this universal sense of agreement of this is right or this is wrong.
Exactly.
And it kind of just I don't know. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but have you heard of the movie Don't Look Up?
Yeah, you have. Yeah.
So it's
very similar.
Yeah, no, but it's a great archetype. It's something as obvious as an asteroid coming towards the Earth. Everyone can see it.
Yeah.
But it's we can't agree on how to figure out what to do with it. Yes. And everyone has a differing opinion on what's going on. So it reminds me of that a bit. But yeah, I think the whole reaction around it was just interesting to see how people kind of just took that on their own ideas about it when it was.
Yeah, and that's what fascinated me as well, is just how we as a group, as a society, react to these things and how it reflects ourselves in a lot of ways. So a lot of people were like, oh, who has time for this kind of stuff? It's true. Like in the grand scheme of things, there's no time. But when you look at the psychological or the psyche of an entire ecosystem within the internet and how people react, and off the internet as well, and different categories of people getting the news and how they get the news as well, I find that fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's not so much, I guess, what you're saying, it's not the actual event itself that was that important, but just like what it told, means. Like for us, like what it meant. But also just an interesting point on that. So there was a study that came out about the demographics of how people reacted if Will Smith was right or wrong. Yes. And it turns out like the younger you are, the more people like were likely to say that the slap was warranted.
Which I was very surprised with, is because generally you think, okay, like the senior, like the not the senior citizen, but the older demographic, they fought wars and they lived through so many things, and we tend to think that they'd be more violent and more, not more violent, but they would be okay with something like this.
Slap your kids, because right,
exactly, because a lot of the generation grew up with getting slaps in the head, and like parenting was a different style. But now we tend to think that the latest generation are more caring, more emotionally aware, and things of that sort. So that study that said that the younger you are and you were more likely to agree with the slap was a bit surprising. But again, I don't know the depth of the study, because studies can be very...
that's true. But then again, like, all this, the younger generation being more emotionally aware and everything, it could just be like very thinly veiled. Like that's another... But as I said, I think the true depths of the study, I think it can reveal, and at the end of the day, I think every generation has good people or bad people. On the last note, though, I think the thing that again interested me a lot was the numbers on social, like the trending stuff that it generated. It surpassed Ukraine and Russia by a mile on the day. Right.
Like nobody was talking about that for a while. And also, I think there was a record that was broken as the fastest video to reach a certain number. I think Mr. Beast held that record prior.
Right.
And I think a video by Guardian was the one that surpassed 37 million views within 24 hours. Like the most amount of views within 24 hours in news record, and then broke that. And again, that's an insight that these are the things I love looking at, like just how the numbers and how people react. But interesting stuff throughout the week, from 536 BC to BC was 80 to 2022.
That is the current year. Yeah,
that is the current year. But do you have look at some of the comments that we got from the last, and do you have a favorite one?
Yeah, it's just quite a simple one that I want to kind of talk about. Reviews on the Run says, interesting discussion. Thank you for sharing it. Peace sign. So
peace sign.
Thank you. Yeah,
cool.
It's very peaceful and nice.
My one's actually from a couple episodes back, from Adi or Addy. I don't know how you say it. But he says at Tawsif, so he's saying it towards me, that Dagogo is wearing a monocle. I found that when I looked at it, I was laughing so hard. Only for context, for a couple of episodes prior, we did I was confused if the guy from Pringles or the guy from Monopoly wear monocles.
Yeah.
And you corrected me saying that no, it's the Mandela effect. And I kept on thinking, no, it's him wearing the monocle. He's like, nope. And I said, no, surely the other guy is like, no. So Adi is just taking a dig at me saying, Dagogo was wearing the monocle. And I just thought it was just, we should have like a graphic just popping down.
Yeah.
But moving on to some of the group, interesting topics of the week. You made a video on Telegram that came out this week.
Yep.
Quite an interesting video of how it's anti-Facebook in a lot of ways. Why do you say it's anti-Facebook to start with?
Well, I guess the philosophy of their founder essentially goes against what Meta nowadays, well, the Facebook platform, kind of has come to stand for, I guess, these days, or at least the perception of that. So I guess Facebook likes to say they're for free speech and all of this kind of stuff, but I guess people on both sides of the aisle now, when it comes to different, lots of events have happened, like the COVID, Ukraine war and everything, and people have been seeing like through that, free speech isn't as free as they thought it was. So Telegram is kind of the opposite of that, where anyone can post and say anything apart from like calls to violence or illegal content. supposedly. And yeah, so that's quite unique in the landscape of interaction online. So yeah,
Do you use Telegram?
I actually don't.
Yeah, same. I actually don't. Brayden, do you use Telegram? No. Okay. So that when did you first hear about it?
When Facebook was having the outage issues, and
There were multiple ones.
yeah, the first big one where everyone it was like
years
out
ago.
and people were going crazy and panicking, and then like Telegram got like tens of millions of new users from that incident. I think this would have been late 2019 or 2020. I think that was when that happened. And yeah, essentially, people flooded to Telegram. I was like, okay, what is this? And then from there I'd been hearing about it. It was Telegram and Signal, but then it turns out that Telegram just kind of kept going and Signal kind of, well, it's obviously still there. A lot of people use it, but Telegram's more popular. So
yeah, I think for me, I first heard about it actually even before that through a friend of mine who's quite like savvy with these things. But I think I heard a lot more about it was last year or during the pandemic when I think WhatsApp decided to make a change.
Oh yeah,
their policy.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, they want your data and things of that sort. And everybody was quite upset with WhatsApp and the privacy policy change, which turned out to be
it was a misnomer kind of in a way.
Yeah, because it was almost like it was already there in the thing. They just updated, tweak a little bit of things that didn't really affect, but people were upset anyway in a lot of places. And that surged a lot of downloads for Telegram. And that was the second time I saw. And I think that push in Telegram, I think, is still kind of going right now, to a lot of degree, especially as you mentioned after the Facebook side of things, a little bit of situation with freedom of speech and things of that sort. But I understood that Telegram was kind of like more like WhatsApp and not so much like Facebook, where it's not like a forum-based thing, but more of
so I kind of regret I did have this part in the script, but I took it out because I thought it was getting too long. But Telegram does have this kind of like I guess group function that's similar to Facebook in a way. So it's kind of like you have a channel that you can broadcast to unlimited people, so they can see your content, but they can't, I don't think they can post or anything, but it's kind of like Facebook groups in a way.
Without the comment.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have to check if they have the comments or not. But yeah, so like there is kind of like that aspect to it as well. But yeah, it doesn't have a wall or anything like that, or like
because because I thought that was more in line with WhatsApp to a lot of degrees, where you can actually turn off people messaging like a group, and you can just broadcast stuff as much as you need. But I think that the negatives, obviously there are positives, because in the uprising of like where a government decides to shut down all sorts of communication, you can use something like that to communicate. There are other areas as well where, if there's an outage in certain areas and things of that sort. But obviously we hear the negatives as well, which is a lot of underworld conversations, terrorists, things of that sort, also take advantage of something like that. And I don't know how much Telegram comes in and decides to track those or crack down on those things. Do you have any
I'm not sure about that. I know that is a complaint about Telegram not doing enough. But the thing is, I'm not sure if they have the resources to anyway. They don't have that big of a number of staff. Like, it's less than 50 people. So it's
wow.
Yeah, so it's very small. Yeah. So in order of tracking, and I just don't think they have the manpower to do it.
Yeah.
Unless they use an AI system or something, but we don't know the back end. Because even in the video, I talk about how, in terms of how Telegram actually works, very few people know what's going on behind the scenes, because it all runs through the CEO.
Right.
So it's quite opaque.
So do you actually see it ever taking over Facebook?
Not actually. Well, it's kind of a two-pronged question, because Facebook could just go to nothing, and anything will overtake Facebook. But as it stands now, I think there's enough legacy stuff on there that Facebook will hang around for a little while.
Yeah.
And, obviously PR is probably an all-time low for them. But if they manage to do something to change that, or, change course to attract more people back, maybe that Facebook could rise again. But on current trajectories, maybe in like 10 years, Facebook might not be much.
Yeah, I think Facebook, the platform, may not be at the or reach the heights that it set out to reach in the previous years or over the decade. But Meta as a company, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think,
of course, yeah.
they're especially I think acquiring Oculus, which is the VR headset company, and also the software behind a lot of the VR things that they're doing, I think was one of the greatest acquisitions I think over the last decade, because they'll reap the fruits of that over the next decade as we go more and more into VR and metaverse and things of that sort. So I think it's going to be hard to take, and then I think they'll use that as a way of bumping up Facebook's use in a lot of ways. I think they'll want to. I think that Zuckerberg has that ego, I feel, and then I think he might try and use that current legacy Facebook platform and tie it into the metaverse in a lot of ways.
Yeah, because I guess there's like, billions of Facebook accounts that may be dormant or not, but like, in the future, like if that's a way to get into the metaverse, like he'll be sure to exploit that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and on the note of freedom of speech and censorship around these big tech platforms, Elon Musk came with a tweet over the week saying that, I think it was a poll to start with, saying that, do you believe Twitter upholds the idea of freedom of speech? And I think it was an overwhelming no. And then he replied back to those polls saying that we must do something about it. And then he branded Twitter and other platforms. These are public town squares, town halls in a lot of ways. And therefore, they should uphold the idea of freedom of speech, and none of these companies do. And the final kind of the conclusion that he came to, that, I think I might do something about it. And a lot of people were going into the idea that he's probably thinking of coming up with a social media platform where there's no boundaries, no censorship, everything goes. And I think that's where the difference between Telegram, because it's still a closed channel, is because it doesn't have an algorithm-driven content flow. Something like that, which does have an algorithm-driven content flow, wouldn't, with no censorship or nothing to stop it. What do you think it might look like, and do you think it'll be successful at all?
Well, yeah, just backtracking a little bit. I think it's interesting that idea of like Twitter being a public space and a public town hall, because it's like, if you look at the trajectory of the company, at one point it was just like people, a startup, just like, making sure that they had this app that works smoothly and everything, and a few thousand people used it and it kind of grew. But then at what point does it turn into like a utility, a public, service almost? And it's like, it's a gray area and we don't really know. But I think clearly like now it is the way that most people get information from presidents and political leaders, and it's important. It's very important now. So I think it's crossed that boundary, but I think it's interesting to talk about where that is. But yeah, in terms of Elon Musk actually starting his own social media network, so, public perception on him is quite divisive, obviously. So that's going to be a headwind. It also depends on how it's implemented. It's, talking about an idea is easy, but building it is the hard thing. So if he can build something that works well, and it has the critical mass to begin with, I don't see why it wouldn't be at least, semi-popular. Yeah. But it's going to be a long uphill battle to get something like that to actually retain people.
We try not to get political on this podcast, but I think Trump has his own social media.
Is his social media.
Do you have any idea how it's going? Because I haven't looked into it much.
I heard that when it started, there was a lot of people getting kicked out. Like, I don't know if there was like a backlog of people signing. Like, it was really hard to sign.
Trolls and stuff?
No, it was really hard to sign up to because of some technical issues or something. Yeah. But beyond that, I haven't heard that much. Right. Yeah, but you can see a trend. It's almost like there are people that say, hey, like, we're sick of big tech having this, authoritarian, like, you cannot say this, you cannot say that, we want our own thing. So I think someone's going to eventually do it right, but who it is, I don't know.
I think there's always going to be these issues, I feel, because when you have something as big, or if you want to build something as big as Facebook or Twitter, where everybody has a say, opinions will clash, because what's freedom of speech to you is not freedom of speech to me. Like, what's freedom of speech in America is not freedom of speech in say in a different place, right? And I think when you give access to everyone equally, these issues will happen. And at the end of the day, someone has to make that call.
Well, okay, maybe I disagree.
Okay, interesting.
So I think it was Switzerland on the topic of banning Russia Today and other groups. I think, I don't know, it was some member of parliament or something. They made the decision that bad ideas should be aired and let good ideas win, essentially. So let opinions that may be unsavory, that you disagree with, float, and then that will get destroyed by the court of public opinion. So it's like you don't shut those things out, because what ends up happening is they fester, and then, you know, it might be wrong information, but they believe they're right because there's no opposition. But you just let that, you know, be out, and then people are like, this is wrong because this and that. So I agree with the Switzerland point of view in that. But I think it's just people are scared of having those ideas there, and they believe that maybe people can't have the mental faculties to sort through what's right and wrong. And I guess what I'm saying is that's with like stuff that's clearly wrong, but then you can kind of like go
and that's
closer and closer
exactly.
to and things that you can't really tell. But yeah,
exactly. And I think that's where the confusion begins, because as soon as you say there's stuff that are clearly wrong, that's where things start breaking down, because things like, say, flat Earth, right? Like the flat Earth Society.
You don't believe in it?
Well, I'm saying I'm not part of the flat Earth Society, but say the flat Earth Society exists because such a mechanism exists in the world of the internet. And I'm not talking about just Facebook, but on Google, these societies exist, right? Because I think somewhat to what Switzerland's trying to do, I think already exists. And therefore, these societies exist, right? Maybe not on Facebook, but actually, funnily enough, Facebook gets a lot of, or other social media platforms get a lot of crap because they don't do enough to stop, say, flat Earth Society misinformation or climate change misinformation. Even that saying that would land you on a political side of things. So I think that idea of giving everything kind of open, I think works in theory, but the results will always end up having people not getting a clearer picture because of how we look at freedom of speech. Because as soon as you say, like, we should draw somewhat of a line of what's clear, because
well, okay, maybe, I don't know, maybe just let it all go. Just there is no line and see what happens.
That's what Don't Look Up, something like that comes up, because something as clear as an asteroid coming. So for those who are not aware, Don't Look Up is a satire.
Satire, yeah.
It's a satire movie, basically, on Netflix, star-studded, and the whole idea of it is that there's an asteroid coming towards Earth, and people can't seem to agree that what we should do about it, even though there's a clear, like the whole idea is that you can look up, but there's a whole other party saying, now don't look up because it's all fake and things of that sort. So I think that whole idea of keeping things free will eventually be like, don't look up, in my opinion. I think that to an extent.
Well, so are we, I guess, to kind of come and land and wrap this up, are we kind of saying that it's not so much that there should be rules in place to like let things go or not let things go, but we have a fundamental problem with society in terms of like...
I don't think there's a solution. I think that's where I land on. I don't think there's a clear-cut solution where you can remove all the censorship. Like everything has a pros and cons. Like you can have an authoritarian figure to say that, okay, this is right and this is wrong, or you can't say this on my platform. Or you can remove everything, but that'll also come with a whole baggage of issues. And I think as a society, because we don't have a clear picture of what is black and what is white, and I think eventually having everyone on the same platform, I think we're going through an evolution right now. And I think after that big 536 AD volcano that we'll have at some point, hopefully the outcome will be that we all kind of agree on a specific point without killing us all, of course.
Yeah. I think it's wild, man. I don't know. Like, it's like, should we, how do we go about this? Like, is there some kind of overarching internet law that should be there that says, because we can't define hate speech, you can't define free speech. Actually, speaking of this, is going off topic.
That's
but
fine.
Some people in the UK got arrested for some speech
on Twitter.
Yeah, some speech on the internet.
Yes.
And one of the guys was like, he posted it and then after 20 minutes deleted it, but still got, some jail time, I think, or community service or something like that.
And it was community service, yes.
And that's wild, like it's kind of like, it reminds me of some Black Mirror stuff, like it's like.
But do you know what was the thing about? Was it a call to violence or anything like that?
Apparently he was drunk at the time and frustrated with a war that the UK was involved in and said like all military personnel or all soldiers should die or something like that.
Right.
So I don't know. I guess in my time I've seen like people post dumb stuff like that on Facebook all the time, like back in 10 years ago, whatever. And it was kind of like, oh, you understood that person either was nuts or whatever, but you I don't know, threatening jail time for that is I don't know. I just don't really
dude,
agree with that.
as I mentioned, I think we're still kind of evolving. I don't think there's a specifically right answer. I think we can try different things, but I feel as a society, we're still far from getting to a point where everybody agrees that, okay, this is the right way to do it, because
everyone's getting their own information.
Any authority figure, like you can decide to have one authority figure, but I know for a fact nobody will agree on that. We can decide to have multiple figures, but then you have the idea that, okay, how do we communicate on a single truth if you have 10 different authority figures? Or we can let the people decide, but we see that even then we can't agree because we all have our own biases and community and background. So
this is an interesting topic. Maybe I'll look into it a bit more for a video, but then again, it's political, so maybe not.
So we just talk about it on the podcast up to this point, and then we move on to the next topic.
So speaking of social media and chaos, apparently Zuckerberg is being a Zuck, as he usually does. And Meta hired a bunch of, an actual firm to kind of talk about TikTok and bash them and say that it's dangerous to society and all of that. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, dude, it's honestly, I've seen other big companies do this a lot. I think it's just changing the public narrative, and I'm not surprised to an extent. It's like some of the stuff they mentioned as well about TikTok is that there are lots of trends that tend to be dangerous for the younger generation, even though they actually generated from Facebook in a lot of ways, which was, like crazy to think that they'd go down that path, especially the news coming out at a time when Zuckerberg was trying to save face through multiple interviews and trying to be more quote unquote human. And this news just broke out that they actually hired a full-on firm with a certain agenda. And purely speaking from a business perspective, I think they try to choose the narratives in a way that will appeal to the current demographic of older people. That's why, because TikTok is the younger generation's app, and therefore they'll get the younger generation pitted against the older ones because they're the ones who are more using on Facebook. So in one ways, I think it's going to work against them. First of all, because this news came out, unless they defend or have ways to say that, oh, this is all wrong or have proof, but I don't think people are going to believe it anyway. TikTok will most definitely be more bulletproof now in some ways, because any news that comes out, people will think, oh, it's probably Facebook's
behind the scenes doing it.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think from Zuck's point of view, it's very scary for him. Take it like from how he sees things, like from his young adulthood as a university student, this is all he's had. It's grown to such a massive company. And then when you think about it, when you're at the top, there's only kind of one way to go. And pretty much everything's been going negative for him over the past 2-3 years. So there was some desperation. I don't know who talked to him or if he kind of sourced it out himself, but it was like, well, maybe this is a...
Because when you're that big a company, I think you have different departments who take kind of decision without your thing.
Well, for most companies, but there has been talk that Facebook is like ridiculously run by Zuckerberg.
I was going to say, like when you're the CEO of such a big company, it has to come back to you, kind of thing. Like I generally go for the idea that like CEOs get a lot of crap, but then you also get paid like X amount of money to deal with it. The reason why the lowest employee in the company doesn't get paid so much as you is because when shit goes down, you have to be the one to be that public face and help solve it, right?
Yeah.
So you can't have it both ways, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I think maybe he just well, obviously I don't know if it's all him, but the company as a whole saw that the public image is going in a certain way. So it's like, okay, TikTok's this rising power. You have to kind of stop them, because usually they would acquire companies, but
Yes, they can't get the
So yeah, I can see what they're trying to do, but obviously it was a terrible move. Like, and especially that this came out, it's only going to backfire.
Yes, exactly. And to add more into that line of chaos, just yesterday, the new news came out that Meta and Apple gave away personal data about their users to a group of
children,
teenagers who pretended to be legal authority. So they forged their way to get this data, and Apple and Meta just gave it away.
So I'm not totally familiar with the story. So how did they fool?
So here's the thing. So the question, I was watching this interview on Bloomberg about this, and the question was asked that is it that easy to get that information, right? Because this is what basically government authorities go to Apple and Meta for. There's like a certain procedure. So it's actually not that easy. It's one of the hardest things to do. The crazy thing is these like this group of teenagers or whoever they are that good in forging and being able to manipulate and pretend to be these legitimate authorities to extract that data from Apple and Meta. So at least that's the narrative right now. And of course, there are questions about that. Are they working for certain organizations, or a lot of the times these hackers just trolls if they have a very unique skill set, extremely talented, and they want to set a challenge for themselves that what would be the greatest heist that I can do with my talent, And in fact, one of the teenagers actually lives with his mom. Did this entire thing from his basement, which is incredible. I got a fact checked on exactly if that's, but that was mentioned in the interview about that, and that just like blew my mind.
Yeah, no, but I guess like if you're growing up on the internet and you're like learning all this stuff, because there's so much good tutorials out there about everything, and it's just like if you're talented plus you have all this stuff, like then it's kind of like you can do some really amazing
and
stuff.
what usually ends up happening with these things is they end up get hired by the
like
big,
white hat hackers and stuff.
exactly, and a lot of the times they get paid a huge amount of money because they were the only ones who could see a security flaw and look at it from an angle that nobody else can at such a young age. That definitely have talent.
But that's kind of what a lot of companies are looking for. It's like they run competitions where it's like you find vulnerabilities within our software, and then we'll give you a reward for it. So it's a useful skill to have. Like probably some kids or this kid trolling and whatever, but the consequences are quite immense. Like Apple and Meta have to really look hard at how they verify,
because they branded this as one of the hardest things to extract out of a company, and especially being or masquerading as a legitimate authority.
But yeah, this must come with some serious jail time or consequences, right? Or
and that's the thing. Like I think there could be because obviously it's against the law, especially because you're extracting direct data about people.
No, but it's impersonation of law enforcement. So
Exactly. So I don't know, but then they're teenagers again, and underage. So I don't know how that might play out. They still have their whole lives ahead of them. So we'll have to kind of wait and see how the story goes. Staying on the Apple side of things, they at least I guess somewhat of positive news. The state of Arizona recently allowed the idea of IDs and driver licenses straight into our Apple Wallet, so people don't have to, do the Herculean task of taking out their physical copy and show it to.
Why is this positive?
I don't know. You don't have to carry more stuff. But here's the funny thing. They say specifically that you must carry your physical stuff with you at all times.
Well, I just, for me, I'm quite big picture. So I just kind of see this as like, the eventuation of everything going digital.
So you don't want that?
I don't know. For me, like, I just look at, things like central bank digital currencies where they can control inflation by like forcing consumers to spend or not within a certain time frame where your money disappears. But then you have like, identification tied to that. And it's kind of like if you're doing the wrong thing, then they can cut off your financial services and everything. Obviously, that's very, very far in the future. And it's just, I'm seeing trends and it's just like, I can just see it. That's all. Like it's maybe irrational, but it's just a trend that I kind of see. So I kind of feel like, although it's the small step, it kind of leads to more control in a way.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of people don't want to go digital because they feel they're in control when they have physical copies and things of that sort. And we don't understand fear is born out of things that you don't understand. And we can't entrust digital things completely because we don't understand what happens behind the scenes. For a lot of tech forward people, I've seen that they put they don't use any paper at all because they feel that they understand what's happening behind the scenes or the level of security it may or may not have. And I think the whole idea of Apple Wallet was that they don't actually have control of the data. So they work with the Arizona state government. They are the ones, because they have your information anyway, right? Like they're the ones who approve of your license and your ID. They work with Apple to use that in the wallet. So you don't actually go to Apple to approve or get that thing approved.
Okay.
So Apple doesn't have anything.
Okay.
They're just basically a vehicle or like the mid-level.
Right. Okay.
The middleman.
Well, that's it's whatever then, but it's kind of like.
Because then again, because you look at it, okay, so if the government comes up with an app, which they have in a lot of cases, especially with, certificates and even QR codes for entering events and things of that sort, you do have to give someone some level of authority, some level of trust. Now it's up to you to decide like who
you trust Apple or
yeah.
But well, yeah, it's kind of like why, like
I think the idea of digital, moving into a completely digital world, it's less paper. I think we kind of accepted over the last couple of decades that we've to stop relying on physical stuff as much as possible, right? Especially when you look at things now, we don't fill up a lot of forms physically. We don't do a lot of things with paper. I come from again, Bangladesh, where going into a government office is a pain times 100 because it's incredibly slow.
I guess I understand that stuff, but it's like, I don't know. Like,
I think there's just a little bit of doubt in your mind.
Yeah, no, but I don't know. It's just like when you go digital, you have security flaws like hacks and theft and all this kind of stuff.
But it's true for anything though, right? Like say, you probably have personal, information on your phone. Anybody can hack that. Why do you trust to still keep your stuff in there?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how much personal.
No, like say your money is all digital. I'm sure you use
Tap to Pay only very recently.
Really?
Because I forgot.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cold Fusion, cutting edge innovation content creator who's only recently moved to Pay.
Well, look, even Tap to Pay on top with cards is quite rare. Like in the United States, that's not really a thing.
Really?
Yeah. Most people still use cash. Like it's, Australia is very forward.
I don't think I've carried cash in the last 5 years at all.
Yeah. Well, I'm quite the same, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. I guess this is the libertarian.
The boomer in you.
I'm an old man, really.
He really isn't.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's
to be fair, I've had those fears as well. And I think it's gotten to a point over the last, 5-6 years where I would wait. So whenever I knew something like this comes up like straight up.
That's kind of what I did.
Yeah, I don't jump straight into it. I'll observe for like a few months or maybe a year or so as to where it's going. But then when I move, like I take the leap of faith and jump straight into it, because it's like at one point they will like it won't be available for you to use, right? Like I can't think of an example, but cash is slowly becoming that to a lot of degrees, right? I don't cash out at all. Everything's digital, and I know I've taken that risk willingly, because like I don't have, all my savings aren't in under my blanket, as used to be the case for so many people, maybe even 2 decades ago, right? So you have to move towards digital at some point, but I understand where that skepticism or that doubt might come from.
Yeah, I guess I'm just cynical.
I mean, there's this whole, and that's again a great segue into our next topic, which is a lot of people are moving back from complete smartphones to dumb phones, quote unquote dumb phones, which basically means it's a straight up buttons, only used for call and text, no TikTok, no Facebook, no YouTube. You can't listen to this podcast on those phones, unfortunately. Except
you'll be in 8-bit ringtones.
I know, like very
polyphonic.
I don't know how to get our intro music or listen to Burn Water on 8-bit.
I don't know.
You should release an 8-bit album.
Please. All right. So the dumb phones thing is very interesting. I think it's a mixture of nostalgia plus people being overwhelmed with their current smartphones. So I was doing some looking into this, and I think it is a trend. The sales have been boom, they're very small, but still like doubling and whatever in the past few years, because people kind of see that when they use it, they think they need their smartphone so much, but it turns out like it's mostly a distraction. And it kind of makes life more, well, they say more peaceful. They end up reading books. Just some things I've heard from people that have done it, some interviews. And I guess, it shows that they, in the end, they're more present in what they're doing, and they spend time doing more of what they want to, and more productive with work and all that kind of stuff. But the interesting thing is, one of the things they say they miss the most is navigation. So like whether it's bus or train timetables or just driving somewhere, that the phone doesn't have that feature usually. So I kind of thought in the end, what would be probably the most practical solution would be like future phones could just have your regular smartphone, and then you kind of flip it into dumb phone mode, where the software completely changes, and then you just end up with calling, texting, and navigation, and that's all you can do. And it's the best of both worlds. I don't really
and podcasts. I need more podcasts.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, some forms of audio then, I guess. But yeah, like I feel that could be a good balance. But I really do think that this is a trend. It's small, like the resurgence of record players, but I think there'll be a subset of people that take this on. So what about yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of the trends that we're seeing actually are people moving into holding on legacy or traditional items. I think bookstores has seen a surge. I think Barnes and Noble's opened
a few new stores.
Like a couple of hundred actually, sold the company over the last year, which is an amazing trend for a book reader, right? And I think no matter what or how much digital life gets, I think most people would still want to have some form of physical elements that they want to interact with. I think we're a bit
like IDs.
Yeah, there you go. But I think we're too scared sometimes taking the digital leap, because we think of the worst case scenario, and we think that we're going to change completely away from it.
Well, take for example the book that I just got. Like I could have got an ebook or whatever, but I wanted the physical book.
Yes.
And it wasn't because I was scared of anything. It was just like I felt that it was better. There was something to that experience of turning the pages and whatnot. Because I have a Remarkable 2. It's probably the best e-reader there is. Yeah. But I don't know. It's still like...
Yeah. And for me, for example, I'd probably get a book, and then sometimes say I'd have some time. Like sometimes sitting down with the book, I might not have the time, right? So I'm maybe going for a run or driving. That's when I might just pop up the ebook a little bit to either re-listen or continue from what I left from my actual book. So I think that's where it can...
I guess they have their space.
Exactly. I think you can still complement your physical world with the digital world in a lot of ways. And I think the scary thing that I mentioned is that people think that all our lives is going to Ready Player One, right? It's just we're going to be completely like in that Inception world where people just have these VR cafes and just spending months in there without opening up. And there will be some people who will get into that route.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know, sorry if we're going down this road. I think it's like people born now, like, or just after. I think growing up with VR and all this kind of stuff, it wouldn't be such a leap. It would be like, this has always been here. Like my whole life will just be in digital. But then you will have the older crowd or just camps that reject that and be not maybe like how we are now, maybe 3 stages. So you got completely digital, how we are now, and then analog. Maybe it'll be something like that. But
yeah, but I personally think it probably will be I think a mix would be the best case scenario, is where one complements the other. And I think there's, like you said, the space for the digital world where we choose to go there, and then we've got the physical world where we interact with it, right? And overall as well, I think just thinking about the idea of just shutting down, because the idea of FOMO is what drives, or FOMO basically means fear of missing out. This is a psychological concept that marketers use, and in a lot of ways, it drives plenty of engagement. Or in some ways, it is the core essence of social media or tech, that you're scared of missing out on what's happening. Okay, like you want to check the notifications or something because you think something's happening and you want to miss out on that. And from personal experience, like when I first got TikTok during the pandemic, I think there's a huge surge of TikTok users during the pandemic. I felt like that as well. Okay, like what's happening now? But I think because there's so much content, there's so many different bubbles, there's so many different circles. I think that fear of missing out is going on, because now if I quit like one aspect of it, I don't think about missing out on anything because I know it'll always be there. I think there's that stage prior to that where there was kind of like, at least we thought there was a finite or limited amount of things. So if you miss out, and you can't talk about it with your community, or you can't engage with it. But I think there's so much stuff now, that that void will be filled by something else.
Right.
Even if you miss out on that, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's not, say, like a big event that you completely like when Game of Thrones or even prior to that, like a big TV show was happening, the water cooler conversations, as they used to call it. Like at work, you go and you ask someone that, oh, did you watch the show last night, right? Like that's going away with YouTube and all that kind of stuff. Like everybody's watching different things, so it's gonna be there. And that once people get rid of that idea that it's always going to be there. And I think that's when you can take control over your use of technology.
Yeah. I guess in a way, it's kind of like your mind sees this phone as a window to your extended friend group or society or something in a way. So in your mind, it's always going back there and thinking about it. But then when you cut it off, it's like, oh, like I can't talk and see what's happening. Yeah. And just to finish off, there's an interesting concept of something called hyperreality, where it's something that is like reality, but not quite. It mimics it closely and replaces it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a term that came from something in postmodernism, but you can kind of relate it to social media, where like a lot of the things that you see, it could be reality, but it's not quite, and it kind of replaces it in that way. So it's like, when you're scrolling through Instagram and you see people's lives and everything, it mimics reality, but it's not the real thing. And I think it's important to recognize that, but I think this whole dumb phone thing is a good way to just like shut that off and just be in the reality. So it's not this like liminal zone where you're in between the two and wondering what's real and not. So,
and I think people are realizing that as well. That idea of that, what you're looking at is not real. It's all curated. It's all well thought out. And I think,
and not only that, the algorithm feeds you
exactly
what you're.
So I think people are becoming more educated about it through podcasts like this. obviously. So do listen and pass it on to a friend who's in need to get out of technology.
Yeah.
Or understand technology better.
For sure. Speaking of phones, mobile phones, there was a reveal by the company Nothing. So apparently a lot of people are angry. Maybe you'd like to explain why that is the case.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say angry, but definitely internet angry. They're not outside Nothing's headquarters and throwing bricks yet, but they did reveal a phone. So basically, Nothing is a company that was co-founded by OnePlus's ex-CEO.
Yeah.
So definitely wealth of experience in the industry. I think their greatest strength is in marketing. The way they market themselves is this alternative, cool kind of company. It has backers like Casey Neistat, so it's got that creator side kind of interested in it as well. And their first product was this ear, what do you call it? Earset? Earphones.
Or earbuds, whatever.
Yeah, earbuds. That's it. And that did reasonably okay. Like, I think it got reasonably okay ratings and views and things of that sort. But as they are venturing into the world of phones, they looked at doing this reveal this week on April 1st, which people are thinking, why on April 1st? And then they did this like a 17-minute long or something, like a long kind of like a presentation. Thank you. And part of it was basically having a go at Android and how Android hasn't innovated since the days of lore, and how Apple has just been stagnant and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of it is just looking at other companies and how they haven't done anything. And then Nothing comes out and says that we are here to change that. And then they reveal this small picture, which we'll post it up on the YouTube video. If you're listening audio, do check out our YouTube video. It's just like this small cropped image of a phone that looks like any other Android phone, and it just says one more thing or something, which is a very Apple.
Yeah, I think they're just taking bits and pieces of Apple marketing and kind of, or actually Apple doesn't really talk about their competition. So
yeah, exactly.
Except for that thing.
Except for that.
But you know, I heard this phone can actually make you fly. So that's the one more thing. No, that is not true. So
is it the April Fool part of the?
Like it can do something. It can cook your food as well. No, but I think I'm not sure what's going on here. I don't know, because this reveal, like when it does come out, like there has to be something that they're talking about. But I doubt it can be something so revolutionary that it can live up to all the claims that he's saying. Because saying that smartphone companies aren't innovating when we do have folding phones, which I think is actually something that is innovation. And, there's some interesting stuff, like it might be small, happening in the industry, but to say that no one's innovating and you're going to come and change the game, you got to, back that up with something, and releasing half a cropped photo of a phone isn't doing that. So I think people are a bit disappointed because this company, it shows a lot of promise. It's like from a guy who came from OnePlus, and at that time they were flagship killers. They had, they realized a way to bring down the prices of phones while making them have almost the same specs as everyone else, even though their prices went up later. But
exactly,
it was something that was unique and interesting and exciting. So when he what's his name again?
Can't think.
I forget the ex. To be honest,
Carl Pei?
Yeah, something like that. I actually had a conversation with him on Twitter actually when he was making Nothing. But so
Carl Pei.
Yeah, when Carl leaves OnePlus and then makes this other company, you expect, wow, this could be something really great.
Exactly.
But I'm just not sure. I'm not sure what they're trying to play at here.
It seems like it's a very niche kind of audience at this stage, but
it is. But yeah, better be something.
Maybe they'll just leave up to the name. Nothing. It's nothing.
It just comes. It's just a box with.
It's just a box.
Nothing in it. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll wait and see on this one. So on that note, I think that's where we should wrap the podcast up.
I think so too.
Yeah, it's been good, been interesting. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon for the next episode. Thanks, guys.